Scorpio is not afraid of betrayal. They are not afraid of loss. They are not even afraid of pain. That's what most people get wrong. What Scorpio fears is far more dangerous, because it hides beneath their strength, their intensity, and their silence. If you are a Scorpio, or if you've ever loved one, stay until the end. What you're about to hear explains why Scorpio can love deeper than almost anyone, yet still struggle to feel safe when love finally arrives. Most people think they understand Scorpio. They see the confidence, the emotional depth, the sharp intuition. They describe Scorpio as mysterious, intense, guarded, sometimes controlling, sometimes extreme. Some even believe Scorpio enjoys emotional power or secrecy. But that image is only the armor. Scorpio doesn't build walls overnight. Their emotional armor is not something they choose consciously. It forms slowly, layer by layer, after moments where honesty was met with distance, where vulnerability was answered with silence, where trust became a risk instead of a refuge. Scorpio may not always remember the details, but their nervous system remembers the conclusion: being fully open is dangerous. They don't guard their heart because they lack emotion. They guard it because, at some point, being emotionally exposed felt unsafe. To understand Scorpio, you have to look beneath the strength, beneath the calm stare, beneath the silence that feels unbreakable. And there, you'll find Scorpio's deepest fear. Scorpio is not afraid of losing you. What truly terrifies them is something much quieter and far more personal: the fear of being fully seen, and then left anyway. The fear that one day, every mask drops, every shadow and insecurity becomes visible, and the other person decides it's too much. This fear doesn't show up as panic. It doesn't beg. It hardens. Somewhere early in life, emotionally or psychologically, Scorpio learns a painful lesson. Vulnerability does not guarantee safety. Honesty does not guarantee loyalty. Love does not guarantee permanence. They may not remember the exact moment, but they remember the feeling. And from that feeling, Scorpio adapts. They learn to protect themselves in ways that are quiet but powerful. They become observers before they become participants. They listen more than they speak. They notice shifts in tone, pauses in replies, changes in energy. Scorpio often knows something is wrong long before anyone says it out loud. This isn't manipulation. It's hyper-awareness born from emotional survival. Over time, Scorpio learns that control feels safer than uncertainty. If they understand the emotional terrain, if they can predict reactions, if they stay emotionally prepared, they believe they can prevent the pain they once felt. This is why Scorpio often appears composed even in chaos. Internally, they are constantly calculating emotional risk, scanning for signs of withdrawal, betrayal, or emotional inconsistency. This constant vigilance comes at a cost. Scorpio doesn't rest easily in relationships. Even in moments of closeness, part of them remains alert, watching for the moment when warmth turns cold, when affection fades, when love becomes conditional. They don't fully relax into intimacy. They brace themselves inside it. When Scorpio falls in love, it is never shallow. They love with intensity, loyalty, and emotional depth that few signs can match. But beneath that devotion lives an unspoken question they almost never say out loud: if I let you see everything, will you stay? Instead of asking directly, Scorpio tests. They pull back slightly. They provoke without meaning to. They withhold parts of themselves to see if the other person leans in or walks away. Not to hurt, but to find certainty. When someone fails to respond the way Scorpio hopes, they don't always confront it. They internalize it. They tell themselves they were right not to trust fully. They retreat emotionally, not out of anger, but out of self-protection. And in that silence, a familiar thought returns: I knew this would happen. This is where Scorpio is often misunderstood. Their withdrawal is mistaken for coldness. Their silence is seen as punishment. Their intensity is labeled control. But underneath all of it is fear, not of losing power, but of losing connection after finally letting themselves feel. People often accuse Scorpio of being controlling, but control is not the goal. Control is the consequence of fear. If Scorpio controls the situation, they won't be caught off guard. If they stay one step ahead, they won't be blindsided by loss. If they never fully surrender, they won't fully break. Strength becomes a shield. But shields are heavy. Scorpio often appears calm and grounded, but internally they are always alert. Monitoring tone. Reading energy. Watching for signs of withdrawal. They don't relax into love. They brace for it. Over time, this creates a quiet exhaustion few people notice. Scorpio doesn't ask, "Am I safe?" They ask, "How long until this changes?" This internal tension often turns inward. Scorpio may begin to suppress their needs, convincing themselves they are too much, too intense, too complicated. They may choose isolation over vulnerability, believing that solitude hurts less than rejection. In some cases, they leave relationships before being left, telling themselves it was their choice, even when it wasn't what they truly wanted. This is the tragedy of Scorpio's love. They crave soul-level intimacy. They want to be known beyond words. They want a bond that feels transformative and unbreakable. Yet the very thing they desire most is what scares them most, because intimacy requires exposure, and exposure means risk. When this fear remains unconscious, it doesn't disappear. It transforms into emotional withdrawal, into resentment, into self-sabotage. Scorpio may burn bridges before someone else can. They may leave first to avoid being left. Not because they want to be alone, but because being alone feels safer than being rejected after being fully seen. Healing does not mean Scorpio becomes less intense. Their depth is not the problem. Their passion is not the problem. Healing begins when Scorpio slowly questions a belief they've lived by for years, that being fully seen will always lead to abandonment. This belief feels logical to Scorpio. Protective. Necessary. Letting it go feels reckless. But healing asks Scorpio to sit with a terrifying possibility. What if vulnerability does not always end in loss? What if some people stay? Scorpio doesn't need to abandon their boundaries. They need to loosen their grip. To allow moments where they don't anticipate disaster, where they don't test loyalty, where they don't prepare for betrayal before it happens. Because you can be powerful without being guarded. You can be deep without being hidden. You can be loved without being on alert. For Scorpio, the bravest act is not confrontation. It's openness. It's staying present when fear whispers, "Protect yourself." It's allowing someone to see the parts they've always concealed. Not everyone will stay. But some will. And learning to trust that truth changes everything. Scorpio is not afraid of losing others. They are afraid of losing themselves in the moment they finally let someone in. But when Scorpio realizes that vulnerability does not erase power, that being seen does not mean being discarded, something softens. Their intensity turns into intimacy. Their strength becomes connection. And their deepest fear finally loosens its grip. If this felt uncomfortably accurate, you're not alone. This is only one sign in a deeper series. What's hidden beneath the surface gets even darker from here.